Good morning. My name is Jonathan Kubiak, and welcome back to Admit One, presented by CollegePass. Following today's news, we will be taking a look at Southern Methodist University, where we will be joined by Tamal Pilla, a current senator serving SMU's undergraduate student government. Let's jump into the news, starting with today's big number: $1,518,601. This is the total amount won by Yale University doctoral student Matt Amadio after a historic 38-game winning streak on the popular trivia game show Jeopardy! Amadio's impressive run came to a close on Monday after he answered Final Jeopardy incorrectly, finishing third in the contest. The streak is second only to the legendary 74-win run put together by Ken Jennings. That leads us nicely into our weekly Wednesday trivia. Michael Penna of Canisius College was the first person to correctly answer last week's question. New Hampshire was the state in which the first intercollegiate regatta was held, with Harvard's crew besting their rivals from New Haven. This week's question is this: the Ivy League was born out of the football rivalries of prestigious colleges in the northeastern United States. While 7 of the 8 current members were included in the first mentions of the Ivies, one was left out. Which college was it? And for a bonus, which school was in its place? Email your answers to jonathan.kubiak@collegepass.org. Now for today's headlines. The state of Michigan is welcoming back its first and only historically black college. The Lewis College of Business in the city of Detroit, which has been closed since 2013, will soon reopen its doors thanks to the hard work of Nike designer Dr. Dwayne Edwards and Cleveland Cavaliers owner Dan Gilbert. The Lewis College of Business is still pending accreditation from the Michigan Department of Education, but once open, is expected to transform the educational landscape for underserved communities in Michigan and the surrounding region. Detroit Mayor Mike Dugan applauds the progress made in reviving a state landmark that first provided its services to students in 1928. Federal prosecutors have reached an agreement with the former Wake Forest University coach William Ferguson to dismiss the charges levied against him for his involvement in the Varsity Blues admissions scheme. The disgraced Ferguson, who helmed the women's volleyball team at Wake Forest, will not face prison time as long as he pays a $50,000 fine and abides by the terms of the agreement, including the continued demonstration of, quote, good conduct. While 57 individuals have been charged in the scheme, Ferguson is the only defendant to publicly receive such a deal on record. In England, the University and College Union published a statement citing against a professor at the University of Sussex who faces calls for immediate removal amidst allegations of transphobia. The UCU condemned university administration for defending Kathleen Stock, a professor of philosophy, after students put up posters demanding her immediate sacking and expressed support for trans and non-binary communities on campus. The UCU statement declined to echo those students' calls for the academic to be fired, but instead urged the institution to, quote, heed its values and commitments as set out in its dignity and respect policy, end quote. However, Professor Stock, who is currently teaching remotely out of fear for her safety, found backing from the LGBT community. In a letter to the Times, trans supporters of Professor Stock write that they are, quote, appalled that trans rights are being used to excuse an unprincipled campaign of harassment and abuse, end quote. The letter goes on to refer to student protesters as, quote, bullies, and claims that their actions are not progressive and do nothing to fight against the actual prejudice, end quote. That's all for today's news. Stay tuned for our conversation with Tamal Pilla, and we'll be back with more headlines tomorrow. Thank you very much. Back to Admit One. As always, I'm your host, Jonathan Kubiak. Today we are joined by Tamal Pilla, a current student at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. Tamal, welcome, and thank you for coming to the program.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about what got you interested in SMU and what other schools you were considering kind of in that same general vein.
Sure. Yeah. SMU, I'll admit, was not at the top of my list. I applied for a scholarship here called the Hunt Leadership Scholarship, but kind of other private schools similar size that I was looking at were definitely Vanderbilt and Cornell. I wasn't offered spots at either of those, and actually my dream school was Oxford in the UK. But those were kind of like the big three for me, and they were great schools. SMU's a great school, and I was actually offered the Hunt Scholarship here, and that opened up a lot of doors just on campus. So it was an offer I couldn't necessarily refuse. My parents were excited. I was excited. And even aside from that, I really enjoyed this place. Just before getting on campus, I'll admit I wasn't the most excited. But once you get here and you realize, college isn't as scary or nerve wracking as people make it out to be, it becomes like a really exciting and beautiful place just to meet people, do things, be your own person. That's not necessarily SMU specific, but I found that it's a place that lends itself very well to that kind of stuff.
Hmm. So that scholarship was obviously a game changer. Could you go a little bit more into what the requisites and requirements for qualifying for that were?
Sure. So for the Hunt Scholarship, I had to write a 3-page paper and then submit a video, kind of outlining my leadership experience in high school, what leadership meant to me, um, how I plan to grow as a leader at SMU and into the world. It's not as intricate or as detailed as it might sound. I don't know if it's actually open to international students. I probably have to ask somebody about that. I am from Dallas, so I never had to go through any of those holes. But yeah, aside from technicalities, it's a really great scholarship. Pretty much anyone's welcome to apply. Involvement in high school is a pretty hard requisite, though.
Hmm. Without, regurgitating exactly what you put down in that paper, could you talk a little bit about what exactly that leadership experience that you had in high school was and how that prepared you for not only that scholarship, but for life at SMU in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So in high school, I'd say I had my big thing was definitely journalism. I had a big three on campus for me specifically. I had the yearbook, of which I was managing editor, a literary magazine, of which I was creative director, and then a scientific magazine, of which I was editor in chief. That science magazine, that was my baby, my masterpiece, and I put my heart and soul into that. But everything else, it took up a lot of my time, and I'd spent maybe 14, 15, 16 hours on campus every Saturday. Get there super early. I'm so happy I had my license. Get there very early, leave late at night. In fact, I actually turned 18 on campus because I lost track of time, and
Wow.
it hit midnight, and one of my friends was like, "Isn't it? Aren't you 18?" And I was like, "Oh shoot, yeah, I am." So it's little things, and I was so happy to be a fully grown adult, quote unquote,
Hmm.
on campus because I thought it was so representative of who I was at that point in my life. I was so dedicated to it. All three of those publications came out beautifully, and that was my everything, right? And I think anyone who saw my application um, that year, that fall, could see that in my writing and my video that I was truly passionate about that. Right now I've kind of moved past journalism. That was more of like a proxy for my, how do I say this? It was more of like an outlet for just creation because I see myself as a creator. I like to make things. I like to produce things. That's like what I've always been into, right? And journalism
Hmm.
was the perfect outlet for that, especially at my high school. Now I've kind of moved on um, to more competitive, more student government kind of things. Right now, I'm involved in student senate, which is just what you'd expect. You get elected by your student
Hmm.
body, and you sit on a senate, and you vote, and you discuss, and everything like that. On top of that, I'm on mock trial. If you aren't familiar with that, to anyone who's listening, it's kind of like it's very much what it sounds like. They kind of put you in a courtroom, and you will compete against another team in a fake trial, right? And you're assigned prosecution or defense, and you have to argue a case. So it's a lot of fun. I'm not necessarily into trial law per se, but it's something that just gets you really excited knowing that there's another team that you want to beat, and it's as simple as
Hmm.
that.
Competitive
Um,
aspect, absolutely.
yeah, and then what else do I have? I'm also doing this publication, and it's not necessarily like hard journalism, but it's called the Boulevard Bulletin,
Hmm.
and it's kind of a few upperclassmen started it this year, and it's our version of a satire magazine, just like the Yale Record, or something
Hmm.
similar. And so it's still kind of in the process of being developed, but there's a lot of potential for it, and I'm really excited about it. And then I could have sworn I had one more thing going on.
Hard to keep track after all of that, I would imagine. How
Yeah,
do you
there,
find the time to balance all of that and still, keep your grades up and enjoy college life?
yeah. So in high school, I definitely did too much. I
Mhm.
pushed myself, um, and I'm really happy I did. I learned a lot. I gained a lot from that experience, but my grades suffered, and I didn't have a balance in my life. My parents weren't necessarily happy that I would spend half of my weekends away from home, and then on top of that, school as well, right? Because I had in-person school during the COVID year, so they almost never saw me. And on Sundays, that was like my rest day, right? If I wasn't doing homework, I was sleeping. And so my parents,
Mhm.
they understood, but they weren't necessarily happy that I was spending so much time away from them, my sister, my dog, the year before I left for college, which I completely understand and I still regret. Um, Now in college, you find yourself with a lot more free time. So I can almost uphold the exact same habits that I had in high school, but there's suddenly this extra amount of free time, this extra freedom that kind of compensates for the extra hard work. And I found that if I pour in exactly the amount of effort that I did in high school, in college, um, it kind of everything kind of works itself out. And my grades are doing well. Admittedly, like we haven't gotten to the heart of the
Still early in
publications,
the
the
semester,
Senate,
definitely. Yeah.
the mock trial. It's kind of hard to gauge where I'm at, but right now things are going really well. And all the upperclassmen on campus, I found that they've gone through the exact same thing as me. And so I have a feeling that they'll be very understanding. Should I need to take some time away? Should I need a break or some sort of time away from any of these activities just to take a break for myself?
Mhm. So, based on your experience, would you advise current high schoolers, freshmen, sophomores especially, who are still looking to get involved in extracurriculars and still trying to feel out exactly who they are as high school students and outside of school, would you caution them against doing too much like you did? Because I feel like a lot of people, not only that we've had on the show, but in general, always kind of seem to stress the importance of those extracurriculars, especially for admissions and application processes. But you kind of make it sound like that was almost a detriment to you, despite having so much passion for all of those projects and being able to excel at the same types of things at a college level. It seems like you have a lot of regret about kind of overexerting yourself.
That that's a really, really good question. This is what I'll say, is those 3 publications that I mentioned, I was incredibly passionate about each and every one of them. And I had a cooking club that I did, on the side of that. But on top of those 4, I had kind of smaller commitments,
Hmm.
going on around campus. I was on student council. What else? There was this business consortium that we had, and it was kind of this conglomerate of our 4 business clubs on campus that I was like the one of the 6 co-chairs of. And it's just little commitments like those weren't little commitments. Those are big commitments
They
that
add
I
up,
didn't
absolutely.
necessarily find myself as passionate about. And when I
Hmm.
threw myself into those kind of tangentially from the ones that I was truly passionate about, I found myself losing time, and not in a good way.
Hmm.
I didn't like lose myself in the passion for student council or for business. It was more of a burden. And then I was excited to get back to the publication suite, right? So I would say get involved in everything that you're passionate about. I learned my lesson in high school. Everything that I'm doing on campus right now makes me so happy. The people here are wonderful. But if I could have done it differently, I would have dropped student council. I would have dropped the whole business thing, and really found some time for myself on top of publications and on top of school, for myself, for my family, for my dog. Honestly, things like that really matter a lot more than you think, especially when you're in high school, when you're kind of drowned out by all of these moving parts in your life.
Well, that's a lot of really, really good advice. And I just want to thank you for sharing your story. And we're just about out of time. But if there was one thing that you would say to people who are interested in SMU or interested in school in the United States or Texas in particular, what would it be? What do you think is one common feature that all of your peers at SMU share when they come to the school?
Apply. That's the one thing that I would say, because the one thing that nobody here regrets is having the acceptance letter in their back pocket, right?
Mhm.
Because things happen, things change, priorities change, financial situations change. And SMU on paper sounds expensive, but they give out a lot of scholarships. And I think once you get here, you realize that. But until you get here, you kind of see it as a very preppy, expensive school, which I won't lie, it is. But having a high tuition and having students here who can afford that gives SMU those extra resources that make us a really nice school, in my opinion. Um, and so I would say apply, see if you can get the acceptance letter, have it in your back pocket, have it ready just in case, and visit. Because I've heard, I actually didn't visit until I had already accepted my offer, but a lot of kids changed their minds as soon as they visited. Some of my friends from the Northeast, from the West Coast, they really weren't considering SMU until they visited, and it's a really beautiful place. So I'm about to like leave right after this interview. I just got done with a little nap, but you know, I'm excited to leave my dorm. I'm not some sort of little animal who just hibernates in here. I'm excited to leave. I'm excited to go eat in our dining halls. We have great dining halls. And just go to the library. There's a building called Hughes Trigg. It's a really nice building. Just go study, hang out with friends. Everything here is really nice. You'll feel excited. The environment excites, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. And that's a really valuable sort of characteristic of a campus. And I think a lot of people underestimate it. But it's extremely important to feel motivated just by the people and the place around you.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. I think that there's nothing more rejuvenating about college than being able to sit, on the quad and be around your peers and just always have that, academic energy, regardless of what's going on extracurricularly in
Absolutely.
class, all of that. So I totally agree. That's a very underrated element of choosing a college. And Tamal, thank you so, so much for being here and, enjoy SMU.
Thanks for having me. This was
Thank
great.
you.